Today we're going to take a look at how you can unleash the power of the compare table in Einstein Analytics. We'll see how we can build some killer dashboards without writing code, create advanced compare table charts such as timeline charts to separate lines by year, tips and tricks for creating formula columns and using functions, and then leveraging some of the advanced windowing functions for rankings, period over period changes, and running totals. My name is Carl Brundage, and I'll be your guide. I'm an architect focused on Salesforce solutions, especially the Analytics Cloud. I also have an analytics app available on the Salesforce App Exchange called Reveal. It adds insights for real estate, so real estate professionals can understand the performance of their portfolio in minutes. By night, I co-lead the Lehigh Valley Salesforce Developer User Group in Eastern Pennsylvania with a couple of great MVPs, Peter Knoll and Jesse Altman. For those of you who aren't familiar with Einstein Analytics, you may know it by its former name, Wave Analytics. It's one of Salesforce clouds, and it's focused on unlocking insights from the visualization of data. Inside of Einstein Analytics, you can pull in data from any source. Certainly you can take data from Salesforce, but you can also pull it in from Pardot, Marketing Cloud, Heroku Postgres, Amazon Redshift, and even on-premise sources. Einstein Analytics is great at providing contextual answers to business problems. While dashboards can stand alone, they're even more powerful when you embed them in the account or opportunity page inside of Salesforce Classic, Lightning, or even Communities. Analytics also focuses on native collaboration through the use of chatter and dashboard annotations, and everything's available on mobile. You can have it on iPhones, iPads, Apple Watches, even Android devices. As far as functionality, Einstein Analytics comes in three flavors. First, there's an analytics platform. It's really an empty platform that you can build whatever you want on top of it. Next, there's topical apps focused on delivering answers to specific business questions. Items such as sales analytics, service analytics, B2B marketing analytics, even apps from various partners. And finally, there's Einstein Discovery, which adds artificial intelligence powered insights into the analytics. Now what I want to do is I want to focus on what I see as the most amazing, most powerful visualization that you'll see inside of Einstein Analytics. Everybody's ready? Behold, the compare table. Now I know what you're thinking. That's probably the most boring thing I've ever seen. In fact, you're probably thinking about switching over to another video. So instead of looking at the compare table, let's take a look at a dashboard. I've built my compare table unleashed dashboard. What I have is the ability to filter down to specific counts. I can look at the win rate month by month from one year to the next. I can see my top accounts by sales. I can toggle between how many accounts I want to show. There's the win rate overall for last year and this year. A cumulative sales by year chart, so how much each month contributes to our annual sales. The average amount of our opportunities and how they've changed from one year to the next. And finally, the min-max average deal size by industry, along with an overall average. Well, guess what? Everything on this dashboard I built with a compare table. There was no SAQL necessary, the Salesforce Analytics query language. So let's take a look at how we can turn that compare table into something a little more impressive. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a group by industry. And what you'll see is the compare table is very similar to Excel. It has rows and columns of data. We can go ahead and add an additional column. In this case, I'll add sum of amount. And let's go down to the filter by section and add a filter on it and look at our won opportunities. What's nice here is you can filter each column independent of the other columns. In other visualizations, when you apply a filter, it applies to the whole thing. Here, you can go one column at a time, in essence, comparing one value to another, and that's where the compare table gets its name. We can also do some things like head up to the top and show our totals. So in this case, it'll summarize our data below and tell us that we had 706 opportunities and won over $400 million. Now I'll show you in a little bit where these totals can get a little problematic. Now with the summer 17 release, it's even easier to take a compare table and take a look at it as a visualization. You can simply click on the chart option and we could show all the data as a dot plot, the handy dandy column or bar chart. And what we'll do is we'll get a chart for each of the metrics. In this case, the one amount of our opportunities and the number of opportunities. So as we start looking at this, one of the things that comes into mind is, well, if we had 75 opportunities and 49 million, how many did we actually win? What's been our win rate? We head back to the compare table, we can put that calculation together. Instead of the sum of amount, I'm going to change this to back to the count of rows. One of the things you'll notice is you can have the same column multiple times. And when I made that change, the filter was actually removed. It doesn't keep the filter as you change from one column to the next. So let's go back and put on our 1 opportunities. And to make this easier, because count of rows is kind of confusing, we can come up and say edit this column. And we'll call the first one all opportunities. The second one 1 opportunities. And then we'll use the plus and add a third column. What we're going to do differently here is instead of pulling a column from the database, we're going to calculate something on the fly. Just like Excel, you have column headers. I actually did try this out once. I could get up to 26 columns, so up to the letter Z before the compare table stopped working. And to do a formula, it's just a simple B divided by A. We will show it as a percentage, and we'll call this our win rate. I hit apply, and you can see that we won 22 of 32 opportunities for 68.75%. Now, this would be awesome, right? 1,000% win rate. I wish. Not really realistic. What's happening here with this total is it's just summing up all of our percentages beneath it. So that's not going to do us any good. Let's remove that total, and let's head over to a column chart and see what the data looks like. So there we have our all opportunities, our 1 opportunities, and our win rate. Well, I'm really just interested in the win rate. One of the nice things you can do, either from the grid view or from the compare table, is you can hide the pieces that make up your formula. In this case, I'll hide all in 1 and be left with just my win rate by industry. Now, as I start looking through this chart, I'm a little bit particular about my data, right? I see 38.1, 40.91. I really don't need to know my win rate down to the hundreds. So 40.9 would be sufficient. Let's go and head to the formula and see how we can fix that. I'm going to jump into my win rate. I'm going to edit this column. Now what you might see is, well, it's grayed out. I can't actually make a change to that formula. What's going on is the compare table always needs 1 column. So when you have only 1 column, you can't make a change to it. I just need to show my all opportunities, and now I can jump back in and edit the win rate. So what I'm going to do is I want to get to 1 decimal place, so I'm going to use a round function. So go back to some of our elementary school math. I'm going to round to 1 decimal place, hit apply, and voila! My win rate isn't what I expected it to be. So now I'm looking at multiples of 10 instead of 1 decimal place. Well, what's going on? Let's dig in a little deeper here. Let's change back to a number and see what's going on. Okay, it's starting to make a little sense here. I'm seeing a decimal. Maybe let's get rid of this round function so we can see everything. I'll hit apply. Okay, so when I did A divided by B, 1 number divided by the next, I actually got a decimal. So all the format of percentage is doing is changing where that decimal place is and displaying the data for us. It's not actually storing it as a whole number. So in this case, if we want to have 1 decimal place after it gets moved to a percentage, let's round to 3. So we have 0.688, change to a percentage, and there we go. Perfect, just what we wanted to see. So it's been interesting looking at things by industry, but it might be more impactful to see how this has changed over time. We can take and change our group by. So instead of looking at industry, let's look at the year and the month together. And what we can do is jump over and see this as a chart. So I'm going to use a column chart. Now actually, let's put it together. Let's do a combo chart. And let's move our opportunities up. And you can see you can make these changes either from the chart view or the compare table view. It doesn't matter where you are. And maybe if we could put these together, it would be helpful. There's some chart properties that definitely will come into play. By default, you see small multiples. And what small multiples means is show me 2 charts. We could combine these in 1 axis. So you have the option of a single axis or a dual. Single is useful if you're looking at measures with the same type of axes. So in this case, I'm looking at numbers and percentages. Those won't combine well, so I'm going to use the dual axis. And then one more property just to make use of the screen space. I'm going to change from auto fit from none to just fit, because what this will do is fill out all my space. So now I can see, okay, I had 49 opportunities, and if I hover over here, I won 75.5% of them. When I start looking though, the time component's definitely here, but if I want to compare from this year in April back to last year, I kind of need to draw an imaginary line and say, well, yeah, that's similar. But then, if we look at March, it's kind of hard to know how close you were. There's got to be a better way for us to do this. Well, there is, and you might have guessed, we're going to head back to our compare table. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put back our other column. I'm going to change the order a little bit so that everything was how we started. I'm going to start adding some additional columns. So I'm going to take and add from all opportunities. I'll just add it, which really ends up doing a clone. And one of the things you may see is now we're awesome. We have a 100% win rate. So what's happening here? Well, unlike Excel, when you add columns before, your formula doesn't change automatically. So our formula was A divided by B. We can just take a quick look at that. So now A is all opportunities, B is all opportunities, which gives us 100%. So if you add your columns, make sure to go and modify your formula, and we'll fix that up in a moment here. And the next thing we can do is we can come in and we can clone the one opportunities. And you might notice when you add it from here, it actually carries your filter over, so we don't have to change that. Now I'm looking at data for each month and year. I'm going to change this grouping. I'm going to change to look just at the close date month. So what happens is all my 2016 and 2017 data kind of gets smushed together in these columns. We'll see in a little bit on how I'm going to change it so that I have one set for this year and one set for last year. But the first thing I want to do is I want to change some labels so we can keep track of this data. So I'm going to have all opportunities for last year, opportunities for this year, one opportunities for last year, one opportunities for this year. Let's fix up that formula. So now it is C divided by A. This is the win rate for last year. And we'll do a win rate for this year, and that will become D divided by B. And don't worry if you make a mistake. Let's say we did F divided by B. It'll tell you where you're doing things wrong, like a formula can't reference itself. So let's go back, hit apply. So good. Now we have all the columns that we need, but we need to work on the filters. To filter all opportunities to last year, I'm going to put a filter on the close date, but I'm going to use a relative filter. You have two ways that you can filter dates: absolute, which is entering two date values, or relative, so from the start of last year to the end of last year. And then for all opportunities this year, we'll do the same thing, but we'll pick it just for the current year. As I go through and apply this to one opportunities, what's nice about using the relative date filter is as your data changes, so as the months go by, these filters will move automatically. When we get into 2018, it'll start looking at 2018 versus 2017. You don't have to come in and manually change the dashboard, which is pretty convenient from an administrative perspective. So if I applied my filters, and now I have a win rate, I have last year's and this year's win rate. Let's go through and hide these columns. And I think the nice way to visualize this would be a line chart. We could also do timeline. It's going to give you a very similar result. It's just going to put the names of the months at the bottom. So this is much easier now. You can see, okay, from April perspective, we had a pretty far gap, but March, nice and close. So definitely an improvement in the way that we're charting our data. Now someone may spot and say, hey Carl, what's going on here? Back in January, you don't actually have any data. Can we fix that? And my answer is yep. We go back to our compare table formula. What happened is for the win rate from last year, if we just take a look at all opportunities, you can see that you had 0. So in this case, going back to our elementary math, we're trying to divide by 0. That's not really a real number. So the way that we're going to fix that is we're going to come in and we're going to edit the formula. And I could do something like a case statement, case if the opportunities were 0, then show as 0, otherwise do the division. But there's a function that will help me, and it's called coalesce. And what coalesce will do is it'll take a null value or a missing value and turn it into what I specify. If I want to do something crazy, I could put in 100. But in my case, I'm just going to let it stand for 0. So now we have data. Jump back to the line chart. And now you can see 0 is specified there. So I might just make it as a timeline, and now I'm going to clip it to my dashboard. When I clip it to the dashboard, I've built a pretty much empty template. It just has some chart placeholders, has the account name on it, and I'll take win rate and drag it to where I want, and now I can see first part of my dashboard. Now to calculate the win rate overall, what we can do is use this step that we already built and clone it. You'll see that it makes a copy of what we have. You're in a very similar editor. You don't need to learn anything different from creating it in the dashboard. And if we hop over to our compare table, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the grouping. So what happens now is I'll have all the opportunities for last year and all the opportunities for this year and be able to calculate my win rates. So pretty easy to drag these over. Have a couple of number metrics. Now it's the second one. Okay, I'm still getting the 75.6%. What I need to do is click on it and tell it which field I want. In this case, the this year field. Now, if you've been following along, I actually introduced a logic error here with the win rate for this year. If we take a look at the win rate where we had it grouped by months, you might remember that from the compare table, if we look at all opportunities this year, let's show that back. We have some opportunities, right now is the day of the video, we're in August, but we have some things in September, October, November. We don't really have a chance for those to close yet. So it's not fair to count those as opportunities that we haven't won. So we need to change the date. Instead of looking from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we need to look from the beginning of the year till today. Now this we can't do in the date editor, but we can make a small change to the dashboard JSON. To switch to that mode, we can use Command E on a Mac or Control E on a PC. We're going to go down to the area of our dashboard known as our steps, and I have this step win rate 2. And for each of the columns, we get what's known as the compact form for our columns. And if I come down to my second one, all opportunities this year, there's the close date column and the filter that we put on the close date column, beginning of the year to the end of the year. I just need to make one simple change and put this as a day. That will take it from beginning of the year till today. I head back to my dashboard and I have a much more realistic win rate. So up to this point, we've been looking at some of the basic functions and formulas that you can use inside the compare table, but there's a whole nother class of functions that give us a lot more power. They're known as windowing functions, and what they'll let us start doing is looking across all the data that's returned to you and calculating different things. So let's start by grabbing the opportunities and performing a new analysis. So in this case, let's take the sum of the amount. We'll look for just the one opportunities. And we'll give a grouping by industry and a grouping by account name. Now you might say, hey Carl, wait, you're not in a compare table. Well, don't worry, that's what's great. You can start in a visualization and you can jump right over and it'll carry over what you had into that compare table. So to use one of these functions, we can add a column, or we could go in and edit and hit plus. And instead of typing in a formula, we're going to use this f of x dropdown. This will give us a series of functions that we can use. And we'll take a look at a couple of these in a minute, but the place that I want to start is rank within group. What rank within group is going to do is it's going to look at the columns. You can specify which one. In this case, I only have one, sum of amount, and what function you want to perform. So you could do a rank, which will take and look at your data, in this case, descending order, and rank it 1, 2, 3, 4. If there's ties, you'll get 2 of the same number. So maybe there's 2 people at number 4. It'll jump to number 6. You could use dense rank in order to not skip those numbers where everything is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so forth. Then you could do a row number, the cumulative distance. We'll come back to reset group in a moment. You can see I can pick none or industry, but we'll just leave it at none. So what happens now is for agriculture in this account, BAS661, it ranks 137th. Well, to help get the big customers up to the top, let's change this to sort ascending. And now we can see inside of technology, Daniels is our top customer, ranks number 1. Well, remember I told you reset group came into play? Let's see what happens if we were to use a reset group of industry. Now, when you go back to a formula column that you've created with a windowing function, you get some SAQL. I promised you no SAQL, so we'll just ignore that and go back right to within the rank of group. And here we can change the reset group to industry. And from there you can see, all right, what happens is each time it finds a new industry, it's re-ranking. So we can see who's tops in agriculture, apparel, banking, and so forth. So it's not looking at overall data. We may also want to change our sorting. You probably saw the option where you can sort within groups. What that'll do is you'll keep all the agriculture together, apparel, and other industries. So now we can see these are the top 16 inside of agriculture. These are the top in apparel and forward. Now for my dashboard, I'm just going to keep it simple. So let's take off industry and just look at the account. Okay, so the formula is invalid because it's referencing account.industry. It gives us an opportunity to undo our change. What happens here is if you're using a column that references another one, just like in the case where we added a column and our formula changed, in this case I'm using a grouping, I can't really take it off. Well, no problem. I'm just going to use the undo function. I know I could undo a couple times. I could even look at my whole list of accounts, or excuse me, my whole list of history commands. I can jump back to where I had that right grouping, and now I can take industry off. Now it might be interesting to see this as a bar chart. And again, I don't need to see that ranking. It's kind of boring. Let's hide it and clip it to our dashboard. Pop that on, and there we have our top accounts. So the next thing we want to tackle is a running total. So if we head back to our compare table, let's change the account name to the close date year and the close date month. So this is just a little bit different than we saw before. Rather than putting the year and month together, I have them as separate columns. Well, what's happening, they're not in the right order because I still have that sort on rank. We can use the clear sort option, and it'll put it back into a calendar-based format. Let's go ahead and edit this column. We'll change it to be our total. From an f of x perspective, we want a running total. Because I didn't blank out my formula, we just get a little confirmation message, no problem. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, let's total up the sum of amount. We'll leave reset group as none and see what happens. Maybe it'd be better to look at it as a currency. So it starts and it adds the value for February to March, April, and on through. And you notice when we change years, it just keeps on going. If we want to reset to 0, that's where that reset group comes back into play. And when we get to 2017, no problem, start back at 0. To me, this is a column chart. Again, you can see that they're separate because we have small multiples. I talked before, when you're looking at the same values, it makes sense to put them on the same axis. And let's fit to the space we have. So a couple of changes there, and we can put it on our dashboard. All right, so moving on, let's see how things have changed. Are there opportunities getting bigger or smaller from one year to the next? Well, I'm going to go back to the compare table. I'm going to edit this column. I'm going to call it my change. And this is where we'll use, in this case, I'm going to use period over period. If we didn't have time-based, we could use change from period, or change from previous. So from a period over period change, again, you can pick the column. You can say whether you want to do a percentage change or the absolute value of the change. And you have a couple of options. It's going to depend upon what you put in your columns. So in my case, I want to start with month over month. And what will happen is it'll look, okay, we went from 9 million to 12 million. Well, that was an increase of 41%, and then 6.7%. So forth. When you get from one year to the next, it just looks back to the previous December. The other option, year over year, we hit apply. It'll take and look at the same period in the previous year. So in this case, from February back to the previous February, March, and onward. This works with the different date period types that you can have in your data. So if you have something like a week or a quarter, you could do this at that level as well too. So let's close this, change it to a combo chart. And you might notice right away, hey, your percentages are looking kind of weak there. Well, remember, we did it as a single axis. Now we have different sets of data, so we need to change to a dual axis. Plop this right on. Drag it to where we want, and we're left with our last visualization. So at this point, let's jump back, open up our opportunities. And what I want to do is I want to put together some different things. So I want the average amount, the minimum amount, the maximum amount. And we talked before where you could add the same column multiple times. That's not true inside of the visualization, only in the compare table. So we'll come back and add another column in 1 second. First, I want to group by industry. I want to filter down just to what we have won. And the nice thing you'll see here when I switch to a compare table is because I put my filter on the new chart on the chart side, it's actually automatically carried over to all of my columns, so I don't have to go through 3 times. So a little bit of a time saver if you know that you're going to have multiple columns with the same filter. So let's go in, let's edit this column. We'll add one more, and this will be our overall total. So in this case, we're going to use the sliding window. So the sliding window is nice. You can pick which column you want, whether you're doing the average, the min, the max. And then you can take and average that data, sum that data, see what the largest or smallest value is. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to take the average amount and average it. And what I can do is I can look at different rows. Let's just apply this as it is. So we'll do a currency with dollars format. And we can see what's going on. So we have 600,000 for the first value. So it looks back one row and goes to the current row and averages it. Well, there's nothing there, so it's just 600. Now we go to the next row. Okay, let's go back 1,600,000. That's roughly 1.6. So the average is a little bit more than 800,000. And it keeps going in that way. If you've ever had to try and calculate a 3-month rolling average, a 6-month rolling average, this is where the sliding window is definitely your friend. My trick for it is we're going to come in here and we're actually going to blank out these values. So we're going to delete out the -1 and the 0 and hit apply. So what happens is it actually looks across our whole data set and says across all industries, the average is $1 million. We could prove that out. Let's just take off our group by for a second. And you can see the average amount is just over 1 million here, and it's just over 1 million there. Now, you may also say, hey, Carl, but wait, it's a little bit different. It's 1.011 instead of 1.064. Well, what's going on there? Well, my opportunities are linked to accounts. I have some accounts that don't have an industry specified. So if there's a null or missing attribute value, it's not going to show in the grouping. So you need to think about that in your data acquisition strategy and put in a value like unspecified if you need that data to show for a particular account. So the last way we're going to visualize this is we're going to jump to a combo chart. Now, one of the nice things here with this combo chart, sometimes people think that you can only have a bar and a dot plot. You can actually have multiple dot plots. And if we change to a single axis, we can put them all together. Let's make it fit. But, those min values, it pretty much just looks like 0. So it's kind of hard to see the magnitude. We can do something to fix that. We can come down to the y-axis and put a log scale. So the log scale will give us more space for the initial values, and then the axes get smaller and smaller and closer together. So it's much easier to see the min values. So we'll just add this one. Put it on our dashboard, and guess what? Just in a few minutes, we built this pretty powerful dashboard, all from using the compare table. One of the best things about it is we didn't write any SAQL. Well, why is that important? Why would we care about that? What it lets us do is it lets us fully explore any of these visualizations. We could come into the one that we just built as a user of the dashboard, hit explore, and now we can actually change the data. So someone may say, well, you know what, it's great to see this by industry, but I'm more interested in regionally. How are we doing by billing state? Well, guess what? They can come in, they can change it, and they can definitely see the differences. So look, Arizona doing pretty well. It's above the average. Even the minimum one is above the average. So you can use this to answer those second and third questions that come when you start visualizing data, and you didn't have to write any SAQL. Now I have a couple of resources available for you. First of all, I've taken all my examples from today and put them into an unmanaged package with an Analytics template app. What that means is after installing, you can go into Analytics Cloud, create a new app, answer a couple of questions, and pull in your data with my examples. I have a posting on my blog about how you can set up this app, as well as the link to obtain it. Trailhead is a great resource. The data that I used came from the analytics dev org that's mentioned inside of one of the trails. I've also picked out some of the key analytics trails and put them together in my own Trailmix, where you can go through and start learning about analytics. And then finally, I mentioned some items around functions that you use in a compare table, as well as the windowing functions. Here's links to each of the documentations on where you can find help about it. Well, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help you out. You certainly can follow me and hit me up on Twitter at Carl Brundage. I am very active inside of the SES community, the Einstein Analytics group, and you can always leave a comment on my blog if you want to get in touch with me or on this recording as well too. It's been a pleasure sharing with you today. Happy trails on your analytics adventures.